Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my December 2021 page 112 tag. The page 112 tag was started by Sean at Sean the Book Maniac. He based it off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised the long list of that prize solely by reading page 112 of all the books in contention. That's roughly the middle of a novel-sized book. So you have no context for the beginning of the story and can only go by the quality of the writing on that page. So I've been using this tag to whittle down my physical TBR shelves. It's been my monthly COVID project, basically. I will link to my latest video, my last video down below. I take 3 random titles from this handy dandy Books and Cats mug. They have all of my acquisitions from 2020 and before in them, or they did. It's getting kind of shallow now, but anyway, I take 3 at random, I read page 112, and then hopefully I stick to the rules of the tag about how I choose which book of the 3 I'll add to my monthly TBR. But sometimes I do let some other things take precedence, like, you know, last month was NaNoWriMo and I was rather busy, so a shorter book was helpful. But I have less of that to be worried about in December, so I'm going to try my best. I'm going to, I'm excited to, analyze page 112 and use that as my qualifications. So anyway, here we go. And I'll start with book number 1. Also, I guess most of my most recent purchases have now been removed, so I'm excited to, I think a lot of these in here I've had for a few more years, so it'll be exciting to try them out. So here we go. Bashert by Herb Fried. I believe this was a holiday gift back in 2019, I want to say. I don't think it was 2020. So my mother got this for me for the holidays. Bashert is a Yiddish word that means beloved, so I think this does comprise a little bit of a romantic story. Okay, and now for number 2. Even with so few things in here, I feel like I have so many unread books. I'm not entirely sure where all of them come from, but I guess we'll see if I remember accurately with this one. The Shore by Sarah Taylor. Oh, this is exciting to me because I got this from my library bookstore so long ago that I can't quite remember the exact year that it was. But I got it basically on recommendation from Liberty Hardy from the Book Riot universe, as it were. Probably one of her podcasts. She talked about it, and I know that it's a story that goes throughout time, and it also takes place in part near the Chesapeake, and the Chesapeake is a big part of being a Marylander. So this is one of those books that I've basically been looking at for years and not reading, and now I get the chance to finally read it, so I'm very excited. And finally, book number 3. I guess I don't have much more dialogue to say here, but let's just, I guess I'll just go with this one. The Space Between the Stars by Anne Corlett. Basically, this one and the last one are 2 books that I've been wanting to read for so long that I've been wondering maybe I shouldn't wait for a random page 112 tag where I never seem to get them and just read them anyway, just choose to read them. But, I have so much to read per month that, I don't know. Anyway, they stayed in the mug and didn't come out of it, but now they're out of it, and I'm so excited because I'm sure this has been also at least a couple of years. I bought this book on my birthday when I was scouring Barnes & Noble with a friend of mine, and we were, celebrating our birthdays there a couple years ago now. And I heard about this book through Katie from Books and Things because a friend of hers wrote it, and it's one of those Station 11 comps that I'm so excited about that takes place in space. I think I even mentioned it like a couple of months ago for September's space opera readathon that Thomas at SFF 180 hosted, and I was kind of hoping that this would come out that month, but it's a couple months late. Man, this is I'm really excited for this this reading session. I feel like I'm already coming with a little bit of bias, but well, anyway, now you've seen me pick out the books, and I'm going to go read the pages to myself and then come back to reread them and tell you my thoughts. Okay, I'm back to read and discuss, starting with book number 1, Beschert by Herb Fried. When I try to lift up my arm, I get a stutch in the chest. I want to go to your doctor with you, Marion said. Call for an appointment first thing tomorrow. Bertha shrugged and hobbled toward the kitchen. We can't let this go, Marion whispered to Dan. Her bones are so brittle, one fall could do her in. What can they do for her? She's had severe osteo for a long time now. There aren't any cures so far as I know. All they can do is put her on heavier pain medication. Then let's do it if that's the problem. But osteoporosis affects the spine, not the chest. Marion proceeded to set the table, while Dan flopped onto his mother's Barca-lounger to watch the game. Brunch passed uneventfully. By the time Dan and Marion got home, the second half was just beginning. It was an exciting game, evenly matched, with both quarterbacks at the top of their form. Turn down that damn TV! I can't hear a thing, Marion said angrily at the doorway to the den. Dan didn't think the TV was too loud at all, but he didn't want to get into a discussion about his hearing problems just then. But the way she said it bothered him. They never talked to one another that way. If the TV was so loud, particularly if one of them was working or on the phone or reading or just thinking, they merely asked the other if they would mind turning it down a little. Never, turn down that damn TV! But he let it go. Fourth quarter. Marion came into the den wearing her jacket. Where are you going? I need to buy some fruit. Call Chalet Gourmet. They deliver on Sunday. No, I have to pick out some stuff we might need later. Where will you go? And that's where we ended. Not finding out where Marion goes, because that's on page 113. I liked this page better than I thought I would. Admittedly, I had lower hopes for this book because I'm pretty sure it's self-published, and you know, that can be hit or miss. But I thought this was pretty good. I mean, you know, we were lucky to begin basically at the beginning of a paragraph and a bit of dialogue, and it seems apparent that it's about Bertha having some problems with her chest, it seems like, and she seems to be Dan's mother, and Marion, I would assume then, is her daughter-in-law. You know, Dan and Marion are definitely acting like a married couple. And they themselves are perhaps getting advanced in age because Dan might be having hearing problems. And I thought that was a really great way to introduce that because, you know, he's watching the football game with the sound turned up high, and so, you know, Marion, you know, interjecting with turn down that damn TV is like a great in-story way to talk about his hearing problems, and then also a great in-story way to talk perhaps about some straight edges in the marriage or the relationship between the two of them, because Dan's like, you know, we never were this harsh with each other before. She was never like this with me before. So yeah, I do think there was a little bit of clunkiness when the game was introduced. I felt like we were in the middle of something else, like this whole thing with what's going on with Bertha, and then like suddenly there's a lot of attention being paid to the game, I thought. Maybe it's my bias because I'm just not that interested in football unlike the rest of my family. So anyway, I liked this. I thought, I'm intrigued overall. I want to know where Marion is going, and more importantly, I want to know how this relationship is going, and if Bertha's going to get a new diagnosis or the help she needs, or what's going on there. You know, it was a good page. You know, there's a lot of juicy stuff on the page for the characters, but I do think it was all done in a good way, like in story. Book 2 is The Shore by Sarah Taylor. But arguing with Pierce was useless. He always brought the conversation back around to her performance in bed, and she automatically lost. So she hadn't said anything, either when he first mentioned it or when they bought groceries for the trip on their way up the mountain. She sat over near the passenger door as they wound slowly over the rutted logging paths, her forehead pressed to the window, looking out at the trees whipping by. It was such a charming place, she had to give it that, an old-fashioned kitchen, tiny parlor, and master bedroom on the ground floor, with 2 little rooms like an afterthought above. The front porch looked out over a small meadow with the mountains rising beyond it, and no neighbors within sight or holler. On the night they arrived, they cooked bacon, eggs, and rice together over the old wood stove, almost smoking themselves out of the kitchen with their effort to light the fire. It had become a point of honor that they not use the little electric range that sat in the corner of the kitchen. Afterward, with dirty dishes still spread across the table and grease congealing in the frying pan, Pierce pulled her to the top of the bald hill behind the house to look at the stars in the smudge of the Milky Way, and she almost forgave him. It was easy to forgive him when he had his arm around her, and it was quiet enough that she could hear his breath rasping in his lungs. They messed around a bit, up under the naked sky, but he hadn't felt like doing more. For once, she didn't want to push it. The fields around the house were rented out to valley farmers for cattle grazing, and on their first visit, when Pierce had pulled her down to have sex on the dead grass in the front field, one of the bulls had smelled them and chased her all the way up the porch, his erection flopping almost to the ground. Well, that is an image to end on. I guess it technically goes a little bit into page 113, but that's the end of the sentence. And perhaps more about bull behavior than I want to know, or maybe it's a note about where and when to engage in sexual congress. But overall, I feel like this page suffered from things the other one didn't. Like, first of all, there was this really long sentence at the beginning of page 112 where I had to sort of pick a starting point, and they were quite obviously the 2 characters, Pierce and the protagonist, were in the middle of something that we didn't have the context for, which again is just, one of the things about the page 112 tag. And that's fine, I guess. We know that whatever it is, it seems to be an argument, and sex seems to be a big thing between the 2 of them, whatever their relationship is. I liked all of the description of the house and of the drive, and, even getting the backstory about, the grazing area, but, it was all, description and exposition, and none of it was dialogue and interaction, between the 2 of them other than it being described. So yeah, as I said. So yeah, I liked the descriptions, but I would have preferred a page with, more of an immediate interactive element. That final sentence is certainly very memorable, but I'm not sure it's enough for me to choose this book, even though I do ultimately want to read it. That's definitely not going on a DNF pile. And finally, book 3 is The Space Between the Stars by Anne Corlett. He didn't answer straight away. Just as she thought he'd fallen asleep, he opened his eyes again. Home's what's left over when you've figured out all the places you don't want to be. His lips lifted in a brief smile. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? But that's what we do. We say, not there, and not there, and not there, until there's only one place left. He stifled another yawn. It's like triangulating something. Work out why you don't want all those other places, then follow the lines and see where they cross. His hand waved vaguely, as though drawing some diagram in the empty air. She should go. They'd both be awkward over this conversation when he woke. She moved towards the door. Get some sleep. Jamie. She turned. There's someone, he said, fixing her with a suddenly clear gaze. Someone you're looking for. Isn't there? She hesitated for a long moment. Yes. Thought so. He gave her the faintest of smiles and closed his eyes. Jamie watched him for a moment before letting herself out and closing the door behind her. Back in her quarters, she climbed straight into bed. She was lead-limbed with tiredness. She should really go and check in on Mila and Lowry. He'd mentioned a heart problem. Just as she closed her eyes, her thoughts flickered back to those moments when she'd slumped next to Callan. She had an absurd urge to climb back down, to go and find him and curl against his back, just to be close to someone else who might be feeling a little of what she was feeling. Daniel. His name fell into her thoughts, sending ripples of shock running through her. He stared back at her accusingly from the shadows at the corners of her mind. You never wanted to be close to me. She rolled over, wrapping herself in the blanket. She had wanted him, but when she let him in, he seemed to fill all the space she gave him, and still want more of her, digging away at her closed-off corners, the ones clearly marked with a sign saying, No Through Road. Surprisingly, unsurprisingly, I enjoyed this one as well. We were lucky to begin again with a piece of clear dialogue where we were quite obviously between a conversation between these two people. Jamie and whoever the man was she was talking to, you know, there's obviously a few names that filtered through this page. But, you know, what they were talking about was just so intriguing. I think what really drew me to this book, these questions of home and belonging and looking for someone, that it just drew me in. I mean, this just obviously seems to be a very serious, emotional conversation, even if perhaps it's not the best idea given what Jamie's thinking about it. And there are a few lines that I think are a little too showy, not telly in this page, but again, I'm still very invested in ultimately getting to this story. I am very invested in characters who are searching and have interior drama, and Jamie from this page certainly seems to have that. Though it is interesting too to think of similarities between all three of these pages having to do with like chest or heart problems, and each of these pages has to do with like an interaction between a man and a woman. This one I don't know if they're, you know, romantically involved in any way, but it's still a deep relationship in some way or another. But anyway, I am still very much looking forward to getting to this book. I want to get to it soon, but to my great surprise, I thought this was the strongest page 112. It had a lot of in-scene stuff going on with dialogue and backstory and the sorts of issues that it seems are plaguing the characters in the moment and are compelling about their relationships and their health. So I think I'm going to go with this one. Another reason I think I won't go with The Space Between the Stars this month, even though I am still very drawn to the issues on this page and, you know, in the back of the book and so forth, is that, you know, the Station 11 miniseries adaptation is coming out this month. So I feel like maybe it'll be overkill to read a book that I'm having Station 11 feels toward and also watch the adaptation at the same time. I mean, maybe that's not really fair to judge this book too much on that vibe, but there we have it. That's certainly one of the things that, you know, those issues of, you know, who we are and where we belong are, and in a speculative setting, a future setting, are both part of this book and Station 11. So I do think that's another reason to put this aside in December. So yeah, bring on the Bashert. Will Marion and Dan, you know, get their shit together? I guess we'll see. I'll report back later in the month. So that about covers it for me now. You can find the Goodreads links for all of these books listed down below, as well as links to other things I rambled about in this video. I also like to use this outro section to highlight another TBR game on BookTube, a popular sort of subset of BookTube, because I feel like my page 112 tag is kind of in that vein. So this month I'm going to highlight TBR Jenga from Rye's Reading Corner. She sets up the Jenga game, and each piece she puts a prompt on. So then, you know, when she takes out one piece at a time, she finds a book relating to the prompt, and then I'm sure one of the punishments is whenever the Jenga tower falls over, she has to do a punishment of some sort, but at least for the most part she seems to do okay with, you know, keeping it up. So that's pretty cool. I like the idea. I guess it's a bit like, you know, putting pieces of paper in a mug, about having, you know, random prompts that you can't see until you pull them out. So anyway, I'll link that down below. I will be back at the end of the week with another Friday Reads video, hopefully staying close to Friday at least. We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.